Astute Quotations, Part 17. You find out your mistakes from an audience that pays an admission. Ventriloquist Edgar Bergen. The deeper you go into something, the bigger the problem grows. Russian proverb. I'm married beneath me, all women do. British politician Nancy Astor. Timing is everything. 5 minutes make the difference between victory and defeat. Admiral Nelson. There is no democracy in physics. We can't say that some second-rate guy has as much right to an opinion as does Fermi. Physicist Luis Walter Alvarez. One of life's most painful moments comes when we must admit that we didn't do our homework, that we are not prepared. Football Pro Bowler and broadcaster Merlin Olsen. Be patient with the negative people of the world. Take a moment to think how they are helping you clarify your own thinking and firming your own resolve. Then head slap them out of the way. NFL Hall of Famer Deacon Jones. The criminal is the creative artist, the detective only the critic. G.K. Chesterton. Nobody dies from lack of sex. It's lack of love we die from. Novelist Margaret Atwood. Wherever one wants to be kissed. Fashion designer Coco Chanel when asked where women should apply their perfume. One cannot be always laughing at a man without now and then stumbling on something witty. Novelist Jane Austen, from Pride and Prejudice. I didn't want to hurt them, I only wanted to kill them. Son of Sam, David Berkowitz. Outside of the killings, Washington has one of the lowest crime rates in the country. Former Mayor Marion Barry of Washington, D.C. Not only do I knock 'em out, I pick the round. Stronger than dirt. The Doors from Touch Me, in a line taken from a commercial for Ajax Cleanser. Every neurotic is partly in the right. Psychiatrist Alfred Adler. You was definitely in the right. Pink Floyd from Money. When a woman isn't beautiful, people always say, "You have lovely eyes. You have lovely hair." Chekhov from Uncle Vanya. Marriage always demands the finest arts of insincerity possible between two human beings. Novelist Vicky Baum. Those not present are always wrong. Philippe Détouché, French playwright. We are much beholden to Machiavelli and others who write about what men do and not what they ought to do. Most of the papers that are submitted to the Physical Review, an academic journal, are rejected, not because it is impossible to understand them, but because it is possible. Those which are impossible to understand are usually published. Physicist Freeman Dyson. People who have PhDs consider themselves a priesthood, and inventors generally don't have PhDs. Freeman Dyson. The duties of each moment are the shadows beneath which hides the divine operation. Jean-Pierre de Caussade, Jesuit priest, and that is one of the great recurring themes in quotation history. Removing the faults from a stagecoach may produce a perfect stagecoach, but it is unlikely to produce the first motor car. Psychologist Edward de Bono. A spirit of national masochism prevails, encouraged by an effete corps of impudent snobs who characterize themselves as intellectuals. Vice President Spiro Agnew. I think you are wrong to want a heart. It makes most people unhappy. The Wizard of Oz, speaking to the Tin Man. There are two kinds of lawyers, one who knows the law, and the other who knows the judge. Lawyer Joseph Choate, 1832 to 1917. The ultimate sin of any performer is contempt for the audience. Lester Bangs, music critic. You are going to react to a painting in a way that the painting demands you react. Greil Marcus, music critic. There's a level of immaturity to people who just can't clean up after themselves. John Wenner, publisher of Rolling Stone, which lost all relevancy around the year 1980. Anybody who thinks money will make you happy hasn't got money. Music executive David Geffen. Be silent in a group of people. See what they reveal to you. Yoko Ono. 1 cubic foot less and it would be adulterous. Humorist Robert Benchley in 1946 on sharing a small office with the writer Dorothy Parker. The way out is through the door you came in. Psychiatrist R.D. Laing. It is completely unimportant. That is why it is so interesting. Agatha Christie from The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I'm as pure as the driven slush. Tallulah Bankhead, actress from the golden age of Hollywood and humanitarian. I told you to wait in the car. Tallulah Bankhead, after meeting up with a former lover for the first time in years. There were giants in the earth in those days. Genesis 6:4. The finest compliment you can pay a man is that his word is good as gold. Evel Knievel, Daredevil. April showers bring May flowers. May flowers bring pilgrims. Heard at Plymouth Rock. War is the realm of uncertainty. 3/4 of the factors on which action is based are wrapped in a fog of greater or lesser uncertainty. Karl von Clausewitz. I'm no ambulance chaser. I always get there before the ambulance arrives. Attorney Melvin Belli. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. Proverbs 26:11. Love is nature's psychotherapy. Psychiatrist Eric Berne. No man is a hero to his wife's psychologist. Eric Berne. Psychoanalysis is not the only way to resolve inner conflicts. Life itself still remains a very effective therapist. psychoanalyst Karen Horney. I never questioned the integrity of an umpire. Their eyesight, yes. Baseball manager Leo DeRocher. The nice guys are all over there, in 7th place. Leo DeRocher. What good is the moon? You can't buy it or sell it. Ivan Boesky, Wall Street crook. I invented the web just because I needed it, because it was so frustrating that it didn't exist. Sir Tim Berners-Lee. So I'm ugly, so what? I never saw anyone hit with his face. Baseball icon Yogi Berra. Take a broom and clean someone's house. Mother Teresa. We must travel in the direction of our fear. Poet John Berryman. Definition of homesick: dead broke abroad. From The Devil's Dictionary by Ambrose Bierce. The covers of this book are too far apart. One sentence book review by Ambrose Bierce. What people say behind your back is your standing in the community. Journalist Edgar Howe, 1853 to 1937. When small men begin to cast big shadows, it means that the sun is about to set. Chinese writer Lin Yutang. I think he was talking about Pearl Jam and Nirvana. An Indian who is as bad as the white man could not live in our nation. He would be put to death and eaten up by the wolves. Black Hawk, 1767 to 1838. What the detective story is about is not murder, but the restoration of order. Crime writer P.D. James. The nobility of England would have snored right through the Sermon on the Mount. English playwright Robert Bolt. No one ever forgets where he buried a hatchet. Kin Hubbard, American humorist, 1868 to 1930. Take nothing on its looks. Take everything on evidence. Charles Dickens from Great Expectations. The Submerged Tenth. William Booth, founder of the Salvation Army, describing the poor. The only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them to the impossible. Arthur C. Clarke. If you want to win her hand, let the maiden understand she's not the only pebble on the beach. Song lyrics from Harry Braisted in 1896. When truth is replaced by silence, the silence is a lie. Russian poet Yevgeny Yevtushenko. The most stubborn are the most intelligent. Yevtushenko. A library doesn't need windows. A library is a window. Stuart Brand, editor of the Whole Earth Catalog. You adapt yourself to the contents of the paint box. Artist Paul Klee. My hand has become the obedient instrument of a remote will. Paul Klee. Art does not reproduce the visible, rather it makes visible. Klee. It is of the highest importance not to have useless facts elbowing out the useful ones. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle from A Study in Scarlet, 1888. Baseball isn't statistics. It's Joe DiMaggio rounding second base. Newspaper columnist Jimmy Breslin. The fantasy of a man is the best weapon of a woman. Sophia Loren. When you lose your laugh, you lose your footing. Ken Casey, author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I had to keep on acting deaf if I wanted to hear at all. Ken Casey. Bad taste is simply saying the truth before it should be said. Mel Brooks, director of Blazing Saddles. Woodstock rises from his pages. William S. Burroughs regarding Jack Kerouac. A warm enemy is better than a cold friend. Desmond Morris, author of The Naked Ape. Rarely is the question asked, is our children learning? George W. Bush. Something special must leave the room when you leave the room. Management consultant Peter Drucker. This is virgin territory out here for whorehouses. Gangster Al Capone visiting the Chicago suburbs. The instant you think about a thing, you miss the mark. Zen saying. It's a poor sort of memory that only works backwards. Lewis Carroll from Through the Looking Glass. What is true by lamplight is not always true by sunlight. Joseph Joubert, French essayist. Grasp the subject. The words will follow. Cato the Elder, 2nd century BC. It was a blonde to make a bishop kick a hole in a stained glass window. Mystery writer Raymond Chandler. There is no trap so deadly as the trap you set for yourself. Raymond Chandler. The obstacle is the path. Zen proverb. The greatest invention of the 19th century was the invention of the method of invention. Alfred North Whitehead. Victor Hugo was a madman who thought he was Victor Hugo. French writer Jean Cocteau, 1930. Henry Ford concentrated on building quality automobiles, and they held together, even to this day. Most other manufacturers of his time concentrated on style, and they're forgotten. Buckminster Fuller. I don't have ulcers, I give them. Hollywood executive Harry Cohn. It's always easier to apologize for something you've already done than to get approval for it in advance. Grace Murray Hopper, computer scientist. A man who reviews the old so as to find out the new is qualified to teach others. Confucius. A kite rises against the wind, not with it. Dale Carnegie. Kindness is more powerful than compulsion. Steel magnate Charles Schwab, 1862 to 1939. Only in the storm can you see the art of the real sailor. Daniel Achinsky, as quoted by Tolstoy. The more urgently you want to speak, the more likely it is you'll say something foolish. Tolstoy. Wisdom is understanding how eternal truth can be applied to life. Tolstoy. I like that one in particular. Quietude, which some men cannot abide in because it reveals their inward poverty, is as a palace of cedar to the wise, for along its hallowed courts the king, in his beauty, deigns to walk. Charles Haddon Spurgeon, 1834 to 1892, called the Prince of Preachers. None are more unjust in their judgments of others than those who have a high opinion of themselves. Spurgeon. It's not superiors or subordinates who will try to pull you down. It's peers who think you make them look bad. Sales trainer Tom Hopkins. Empathy is the fastest form of human communication. It's amazingly fast. Self-help writer Stephen Covey. The greatest risk is the risk of riskless living. Stephen Covey. No amount of explaining can make the crooked plant grow straight. It must be trained upon the trellis by the gardener's art. Carl Jung. If you are irritated by every rub, how will you ever be polished? Rumi. The aspects of things that are most important to us are hidden because of their simplicity and familiarity. Ludwig Wittgenstein. I never ask anyone how to do it. Mozart on the writing of symphonies. You'll never find light by analyzing the darkness. Self-help writer Wayne Dyer. It is a fundamental rule of life that if the approach is good, the response is good. Nehru, first Prime Minister of India. In the dim background of our mind, we know that we ought to be doing. We know rather what we ought to be doing, but somehow we cannot start. Every moment we expect the spell to break, but it continues, pulse after pulse, and we float with it. Pioneer psychologist William James. The Holy Spirit will respond fully to your slightest invitation. From A Course in Miracles. And personally, I know that the Holy Spirit exists. It was always a freaky question mark to me, but I have seen it. Many of us listen to words, but not to the harsher language of behavior, and therefore are blundering in our human relations. Norman Vincent Peale. Every problem has a soft spot from which it can be approached. Norman Vincent Peale. Some writers confuse authenticity, which they ought always to aim at, with originality, which they should never bother about. W.H. Auden. Too much agreement kills a chat. Eldridge Cleaver. Holy listening, to listen another's soul into life. Douglas Steere, Quaker writer. A good teacher offers practice. A bad one offers theories. Anthony de Mello, Jesuit priest from India. A great man is one who leaves others at a loss once he is gone. Poet Paul Valéry. Serious people have few ideas. People with ideas are never serious. Paul Valéry. The history of liberty has largely been the history of observance of procedural safeguards. Legal scholar Felix Frankfurter. The more complex the network is, the more complex its pattern of interconnections, the more resilient it will be. Fritjof Capra, author of The Tao of Physics. A science is said to be useful if its development tends to accentuate the existing inequalities in the distribution of wealth. Mathematician G.H. Hardy. Whoever is upsetting me most is my best teacher. Bill W., founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. Almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. Bill W. I have long held the notion that if a vet can't catch his patient, then there's nothing much to worry about. Veterinarian James Herriot. Dogs like to obey. It gives them security. Herriot. The slowest learners often turn out to be the ones more adept at tuning into higher intelligence. Jose Silva, author of The Silva Mind Control Method. For this is your duty, to act well the part that is given to you, but to select the part that belongs to someone else. Epictetus, 1st century A.D. Behind every crime lurks a woman. Chinese proverb. Love is the delusion that one woman differs from another. H.L. Mencken. A man must feel he runs things, but as long as you control yourself, you control him. Jacqueline Suzanne, author of Valley of the Dolls. They are so grateful. One of Benjamin Franklin's 8 reasons for sleeping with older women. I don't know. I'm only 65. Princess Pauline Metternich of Austria, when asked when a woman becomes less sexual. Evil, when we are in its power, is not felt as evil, but as a necessity or even a duty. Simone Weil. For a plan to work, you need a dramatically tangible objective. Buckminster Fuller. A leader loses his grip, his ability to lead, when he loses touch with empathy for the group. Author Marcus Buckingham, a rather bland author, I should add. A leader is someone who carries water for his people so they can get on with their jobs. Robert Townsend, author of Up the Organization, 1970. An idea's worth is directly proportional to the resistance created. Robert Townsend. Buddhism is spiritual mental autoeroticism. Pope Benedict, a closed mind if there ever was one. Bad money drives out good money. Gresham's Law. Borrowed garments never fit well. Italian proverb. She plucked from my lapel the invisible strand of lint. the universal act of woman to proclaim ownership. O. Henry. We know there is a problem with communication, but we are not going to discuss it in front of the entire staff. Townsend, who wrote up the organization. A smile is the chosen vehicle for all ambiguities. Herman Melville. Tap into people's dignity and they will do anything for you. Ignore it and they won't lift a finger. Thomas Friedman, New York Times columnist. I'm big in the hips, small in the waist, and I've got these enormous shoulders. Hollywood actress Jane Mansfield. No one has ever had an idea in a dress suit. Frederick Banting, who discovered insulin. His nature was not remorseless, but to escape from a trap, he has to act without pity. Tennessee Williams. A man loves you not for the things you do for her, but for the things she does for you. Shepard Mead, author of How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. Because she is afraid of not being supported, a woman unknowingly pushes away the support she needs. John Gray, author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Happiness equals reality minus expectations. Tom Magliozzi of the radio program Car Talk. How do you know if you've got a good mechanic? By the size of his boat. Magliozzi. And this completes Astute Quotations, Part 17.